We got an entire podcast dedicated to the 49ers signing of linebacker Eric Kendrick. Oh, what's that? He's not signing with the 49ers? Okay, well, we're going to focus on the guys the 49ers did add in free agency, revamping the entire defensive line. Coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate all of the everydayers out there, and we always appreciate everyone who subscribes on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Can we first talk about how washed Eric Kendrick is anyway? And I don't have to come on here and pretend, Croc, that I think the signing of Eric Kendrick is some great signing and he's going to provide so much depth and impact with Dre Greenlaw maybe not being able to be healthy to start the season. Eric Kendrick's been washed for a little while. For those of you who are tuning in that maybe hadn't heard the news, we have the entire Eric Kendrick's era for the San Francisco 49ers has existed between the last time I've been on this podcast and today. The Cowboys have signed veteran linebacker Eric Kendrick, the former Charger and the former Minnesota Viking. He is actually going back with his former Vikings coach now, who is coaching the defense for the Dallas Cowboys. So he backed out of a deal with the 49ers. He's actually going to the Dallas Cowboys, and I think it does not impact anything the 49ers were going to do at all. But what it tells me, Croc, is that the 49ers are pretty unsure about whether or not Dre Greenlaw is going to be ready for the regular season. So does this fall back on D. Winters and Jalen Graham? Last year, rookies going into their second years for the 49ers. Maybe they're not fully confident in those guys. So we'll see what the 49ers do. And if they ended up maybe drafting another guy or if they ended up adding another free agent just to make sure they have enough veteran coverage at strong side backer and potentially weak side backer if Dre Greenlaw's not ready to start the season.
Well, that was going to be my big question. Like, what about Jalen Graham? What about D. Winters? Right. And I understand kind of wanting to maybe get that veteran in there just in case, but Jalen Graham, he's the interesting one. Really, their whole dynamic was interesting because you drafted D. Winters, you drafted Jalen Graham. Graham, for the most part, was inactive on game day. D. Winters was active, but more of a special teams role. You didn't really see him play at linebacker, and when they needed a linebacker or a reserve guy, it was Oren Burks or some of the other guys. Flanagan Fowles, we saw him come in. So I think that kind of tells me that, especially Jalen Graham, maybe has a long way to go to become a guy that they can even say is a part-time starter. But man, I go back to the preseason, I was kind of impressed by some of the things I've seen from him as just kind of a stack linebacker, flying around, making tackles, shedding blocks. He was doing all the things you'd ideally want to see. But clearly with the signing, and then obviously he flipped on the 49ers of Eric Kendrick, maybe tells you that maybe they're not as high on the younger guys, or at least with where they're at right now.
I think that's a huge I think that's the big takeaway from me, Croc, on what the 49ers have done so far in free agency is depth. And clearly they didn't like not only what was happening in some places on their defensive line, they didn't like the second team, the second unit on the 49ers defensive line, because they have added a number of players. I know I wasn't on the podcast with you on Tuesday. I've been out of town dealing with some stuff. So appreciate all the love I've been getting from some folks out there. The 49ers added on day one 2 defensive ends, Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos. And then they came back and added Jordan Elliott, a defensive tackle. They made the trade with the Houston Texans for Maliek Collins at defensive tackle. So 2 new ends, 2 new tackles with Eric Armstead looking like he's a bit on the way out, and hasn't officially happened yet. And apparently there might have been a trade with the
I think it was official today.
Was it finally official? Okay, so Eric Armstead has been released, and who knows, maybe he could come back to the 49ers if he doesn't find what he's looking for in the free agent market. But the 49ers are doing work and have added multiple defensive ends and now multiple defensive tackles to the mix. But when I look at what they did, they were really active, Croc, for players in the first wave of free agency that should have been added in the second wave of free agency, in my opinion.
So you think they overpaid?
Potentially overpaying, because you almost always overpay for all the guys who get signed and get, those deals are agreed upon before the start of the new league year, which happened Wednesday. And all four of those deals happened. One of them a trade. And the trade, to be honest with you, is my favorite move so far the 49ers have done. We'll get more into the specifics of all the players the 49ers have added. But just from a zoomed out perspective of what they're doing, they were so worried about their depth, Croc, that they weren't willing to wait to sign Yetur Gross-Matos for maybe, I don't know, less, half as much, a quarter,
half as much as it is.
1 million as much, 1 million less. Like, I don't know how much if they waited a month. If Yetur Gross-Matos, if he had a huge market, he was going to already be signed for the same dollar amount. I don't know. But all of these signings, they for sure didn't get bargains on them. And clearly they weren't willing to wait. So they wanted to pay for the depth. They wanted to pay to know that they had the players in hand and were ready to go, which tells me they were really worried about not having that depth and maybe not happy about the depth that they have had last year. And I will answer the question a little bit later. Have they gotten better from the team that ended the season until right now? But I was a little bit surprised because when we saw, so let's start with Yetur Gross-Matos, shadow 49er, by the way. I loved him coming out of Penn State 2020. 2020 was the draft where they made the Buckner trade. They drafted Javon Kinlaw and then traded up for Brandon Ayuk, and they only had 5 picks that year, and they didn't have another pick again until the 5th round when they drafted Colton McKivitz. And they only had 5. There was a 5-man draft class, a really small draft class for the 49ers that year. Jordan Elliott and Yetur Gross-Matos were both 2020 prospects, by the way. So probably guys they liked in the draft, right? And didn't have any picks to select them after they took Brandon Ayuk because they didn't pick again until the 4th or 5th round or whatever it was. And that was also, was that the year? Was that Mitch Wisnowski? No, that was Mitch Wisnowski's 2019, huh? Who were the other picks? It was Kinlaw, Ayuk, McKivitz. Who else was drafted in 2020? They only had 5 guys. There was only 2 more guys.
They got Trent Williams.
They traded for him, but I'm just talking about the draft. Who they drafted?
Maybe Charlie Warner.
Oh, Warner in round 6. Okay, so McKivitz in 5, Warner 6, and then one more player in round 7, maybe that year. But anyway, probably Jordan Elliott and Yetur Gross-Matos were players that, they identified from that class that they liked, and they're like, okay, and they're hitting free agency, and so now we're going to, bring those guys in and give them a shot. Both of those players are very similar to me, Croc. And Jordan Elliott signed for a lot less than Yetur Gross-Matos did. Let's take a look at the numbers so I get them correct as we're talking about those players. So Yetur Gross-Matos, Carolina Panthers, free agent, 26 years old. He signed for 2 years, $18 million, so $19 million per on a 2-year deal. We'll see how that's structured. Maybe it ends up being more like a 1-year contract, and the second year's bigger, and they end up cutting him before that point, or maybe they end up loving him and don't lose him. But Leonard Floyd, 2 years, $20 million, so $10 million per for Leonard Floyd, the veteran edge rusher. And Jordan Elliott was a 2-year, $10 million, so half as much, $5 million per on a 2-year contract for Jordan Elliott, defensive tackle out of Missouri that played in Cleveland for 4 years and is now signed with the 49ers after the end of his rookie contract. So as far as those 3 signings go, the Jordan Elliott money is more like what I would have thought the Yetur Gross-Matos money was, because they've had very similar careers and they were very similar prospects drafted in the 2nd and 3rd round. Croc, there were players that had tools that the production didn't quite match the tools, but you could see how they could become. And I think if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you probably saw Croc looking not at me, but above his computer screen, which I think was at the TV of the Los Angeles Lakers losing to the Los Angeles Kings. And in the chat, they say light the beam. Okay.
Okay. Hopefully the 49ers are watching this game, because one thing that the Kings are doing a lot better than the Lakers, they're playing fast, they're playing physical. The 49ers got to keep that mindset. Maybe the Kings have adopted that from the 49ers, but they are kicking my Lakers butt right now with physicality. Sabonis is just kicking AD's butt. I don't know. I've been checking it out right now, and I keep thinking, Lakers just go on a little run. They cannot go on a run. Harrison Barnes, he looks like prime Harrison Barnes right now, shooting from downtown. This is very frustrating to watch, but I'm going to stay focused here. I'm going to stay focused.
Harrison Barnes still in the league, huh?
He is still in the league, and he looks like all-star Harrison Barnes right now against the Lakers.
All right, so Lakers are trash. They lost to the Los Angeles Kings. That's the wrong team. The Sacramento Kings. And when it comes to free agents, Yetur Gross-Matos and Jordan Elliott, I like the idea of bringing in a guy who has physical ability that hasn't been able to figure it out yet. But I don't like bringing in a guy who hasn't figured it out yet, because in college they were the pretty toolsy player that didn't figure it out. They go to the NFL for 4 years, still haven't quite figured it out. It's like, are they ever going to figure it out? We've seen Arden Key. We've seen Charles Omenihu. We've seen guys figure it out with the 49ers. So from that aspect, I like it if it's a bargain signing. Jordan Elliott was pretty cheap, 2 years, $5 million per. Yetur Gross-Matos got a lot more money than I expected. For a player I really liked coming out of college, I would have thought he would have got a lot less money, more of a one-year deal, more of a prove it, let's see what you get. And maybe it's the 49ers saying, man, we always sign these guys, and then they outplay expectations, and then they walk after a year. So we want that second year in case Yetur Gross-Matos becomes Arden Key, becomes Charles Omenihu, and maybe we don't lose him. And I use those two as example because I think they're perfect examples, because they underperformed with their first team, came to the 49ers, played really well, and moved inside and were flexible in the way they were used. They were, defensive ends that also could play some snaps inside. Yetur Gross-Matos, I've heard people say, that's a replacement for Eric Armstead. Not a replacement for Eric Armstead. He's 260, 270 pounds. But he can rush from inside occasionally, like Arden Key and Charles Omenihu did. So hopefully that's what Yetur Gross-Matos is, 6'5", 270. He's a pretty athletic guy. Haven't seen it on the field from him with the Carolina Panthers. And whatever was missing in college remained missing in the NFL for both of those guys. And we'll see if Chris Kosuric can coach him up and we can get that out of them. So we'll see. But clearly the 49ers wanted to change some things up, especially depth-wise on the defensive line. Croc, I'm going to get to you in a second, so I know you're ready to talk. I've been talking this whole first segment. I want to get your thoughts on those guys, the ends. We'll talk about the tackles and what it tells us about what the 49ers plan is, what is next for the 49ers, and the clues we're getting about the NFL draft potentially, and how the 49ers feel about the draft and how they're going to build the rest of this thing in the 2024 offseason next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're trying to buy tickets for your next big event. You should be excited about buying tickets. You should be pumped for it, and it shouldn't be a hassle through the ticket buying process. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of the football games, basketball games, tournament games, if you're going to go head to the tournament, if you're going to a concert, comedy show, theater events near you, all of it, you can find tickets at Game Time with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat. And, of course, the best price guarantee as well. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. Love that you see what the view is going to look like from your seats before you buy. Best of all-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. A couple taps, you buy the tickets on Game Time, and you got the tickets right there on the app. You don't have to go fishing through your email. When you do arrive at your event, you got flash deals and, of course, tickets last minute and even up to the start and even an hour after your event starts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Croc. Yeah, you've been waiting to say something about the 49ers signings, and I was talking a lot about Yetur Gross-Matos and Jordan Elliott and the signings on the 49ers defensive line so far. I want to talk a little bit more about Leonard Floyd and Maliek Collins, the trade as well. How do you feel about these signings so far? What's your vibe about what the 49ers are doing, and why has this been the plan of attack for the 49ers to go hard after the mid-level of free agents? And the reason it surprised me, Croc, because I thought this team was going to start going a lot more like the Los Angeles Rams were, stars and scrubs. You're paying a few guys a whole bunch of money. You can't afford to pay the middle class, so you're going to go cheap with draft picks to supplement your star core. The 49ers went surprisingly hard early in free agency for the mid-level of the free agents.
I don't mind the players. So I like the players, and it feels like I can kind of see what their role will be with the 49ers. The money, that's a different thing. I know you were talking about that. Like, man, throwing a decent amount of money at these guys, maybe they should have been more in the second wave. But if you just kind of look at it for what they're trying to, the direction they're going at with these guys, I'm good with that. Gross-Matos, can he be stout and be a better edge setter than what they got out of Chase Young? Because Chase Young got you kind of minimal pass rush productivity. So, whatever. You're replacing that, hopefully, with Leonard Floyd. But can Gross-Matos maybe be that guy early downs? He's on the field. He's setting the edge. He's stout against the run. And then on third downs, if you want him to be a 3-down player, all right, go ahead, slide inside. You got Leonard Floyd. He's fresh. He's coming off. And obviously they paid him to probably be more than just a pass rush specialist. But I think from that standpoint, when you look at how they plan on using those guys, I don't mind that. Then you throw in Collins, who they traded for, and him kind of being a guy, a little bit of a space eater. For me, it's just more so just continuing to add depth, guys that can play in that interior. And it sounds like Maliek Collins is a guy that's going to play there. From that standpoint, I like what they did. Now, like, am I like, oh my goodness, Super Bowl, right? I don't think you're saying that. But I will say, I feel like free agency is one more with guys like that as opposed to making all these splash signings.
In the chat, Alex says Joey Bosa coming tomorrow. And this is kind of what I'm getting at. The 49ers didn't even wait to see if Joey Bosa is going to come free agent. They spent their edge money already. They're going to add a third defensive end in free agency after they just spent $10 million per year on Floyd, $9 million per year on Yetur Gross-Matos, and then they're going to give Joey Bosa probably more than both of those guys, even if it's a discount. If he gets released by the Chargers, I don't see it. And so that's what's a little strange about how they did things, is they didn't even wait to see where there might be bargains. They went straight ahead and paid market value for the mid-level. And again, I'm with you. It's not, I don't think they're bad players that they got. I like the young, still talented Jordan Elliott, Yetur Gross-Matos reclamations. Elliot was more in line with what you should pay that player. I thought Gross-Matos got a little bit more, but what you were talking about there is interesting. And that's where you get excited about someone like Yetur Gross-Matos, why I liked him in the draft. And he didn't develop a ton in his first 4 years with the Carolina Panthers, but I think 4.5 sacks last year was his career high. He can set the edge. He's a bigger end, and he can play the role that I don't want to say he can be an early down edge setter if you want him to be, and he can move around and he can rush a little bit and he can rush from the outside. Cleveland Farrell, he can be Cleveland Farrell, but maybe more athletic with potential to maybe with, his athleticism, his long arms, maybe he ends up being a little bit better pass rusher to the Cleveland Farrell, but he might be very similar to what Cleveland Farrell is. Maybe you get a couple more sacks out of him, which is a pretty valuable thing. But Cleveland Farrell got $3.5 million on 1 year. Well, now he's hurt too, which is part of it, which depressed his market, I'm sure. But again, it's interesting. Like, if they thought Bosa was going to get cut before his roster bonus is due Friday, they're going to sign 2 defensive ends that quickly on day one and not wait to see if Bosa was going to be available. So
I think
the plan is not Bosa at all. Yeah.
I think the Bosa thing, I think that's wishful thinking. I don't foresee the 49ers going out and attacking him. Now, I understand just the excitement around it, trying to pair Nick Bosa with his big brother, Joey Bosa. I think he still can be a really good football player. I know he's dealing with a lot of different injuries. I don't think he was released will be released because he can't play football at a high level. I think it's all about money. I mean, they just cut Mike Williams. I think a lot of that, aside from the injuries, and Chargers dealt with a lot of that, just guys being injured. They're higher paid guys, but
very similar. Both guys hurt, they're not available. You can't pay that much money to a guy who's not on the field. Joey Bosa only played 14 games the last 2 years. And that's one of the things the 49ers, with all their free agents they've signed, they played a lot of games. They're pretty healthy guys. So I think the 49ers want a stronger rotation on the defensive line, first team and second team. So Yetur Gross-Matos played 14 games, 17 games, 16 games. Maliek Collins has been around for a while with both the Cowboys and the Houston Texans, and he's playing 16, 15, 17, 16 every single year, right? Jordan Elliott, same way. So all these guys have played a lot of football games, and so I think they're paying early for not necessarily huge impact, but they're paying for guys that they know can be part of a rotation, and they know that they can go play a game tomorrow and have two lines of defensive linemen, basically.
Would you rather pay Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd essentially $19 million a year for the two guys, or give that $19 million a year to Joey Bosa?
I would give $19 million a year to Joey Bosa and draft the guy, and hope that combination. I would hope that the combination of both guys each have more upside than either one of Gross-Matos and Floyd, because Floyd at 32 years old is probably not the same Floyd that he was in 2020, right?
Even last year, I mean, he did have 10.5 sacks, but
yeah, and he's a fine player, and he's a good player, and they're like, look, we're gonna pay 10 mil for 10 sacks. Like we want that guy on the edge. We want a solid dude, and he's well liked. I'm sure Brandon Staley, not Joe Staley. Brandon Staley, new 49ers defensive coach. Eric Kendrick came from the Chargers, right? And Floyd was there with the Rams with him back in the day as well. So maybe Floyd's not the 28-year-old Floyd. I don't think he's a difference-making player, but he's a solid player. He's a pro. He's someone that you can put out there for a lot of snaps and know you're going to get a professional football player on the edge. And the 49ers had problems finding that on the edge at times last year. And they traded for two guys during the season and still had some problems at times finding that, even in the NFC Championship game.
That's the part there. And again, I understand just the excitement around potentially getting Joey Bosa, but I never phrased it in my head that way. I just asked the question to you. Would you rather have those two guys for $19 million a year or Bosa? I think I would take Bosa just because I know he's an impact player when healthy. And maybe that's the big question mark. But I mean, just could you imagine him playing with his brother and what that would look like? And if he does go somewhere and ball out, and it's like, well, dang, you chose Leonard Floyd and Gross-Matos over this guy and a rookie draft pick, taking the guy. Like, could you get a Gross-Matos talent in the second round?
I mean, he was a second round pick. I think they could. I think you find a guy that has potential on day two. That
is, you 4 sacks?
Is raw, because
heck, you got that with Drake Jackson.
Right. There's not that much difference between what Gross-Matos is and what Drake Jackson is. Drake Jackson's a lot cheaper. It's on his rookie contract. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. And it's not that I don't like what the 49ers did or don't like the players. But again, I was a little surprised to see them pay for raising the floor rather than pay for potentially having a big ceiling. Next, let's talk a little bit more about the defensive tackles the 49ers brought in, especially Maliek Collins. If you want to talk about pros, the 49ers definitely brought in some pros. The 49ers can play a game tomorrow on the defensive line after a couple of days of free agency. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is only good through April 30. So get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Claim as of Q1 2024, validation by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Taking a look at the defensive tackles the 49ers added. Obviously, Eric Armstead, they couldn't get that restructure done. By the way, did get a restructure done with Kyle Juszczyk. He's not going anywhere. I saw 49ers Twitter going crazy when they announced the Juszczyk. This is what I love about the 49ers fans. This is what I love about our listeners. This is what I love about the NFL. Like, a restructured fullback contract, Croc, can light up the internet, can light up the 49ers fan base. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. That's why we do a podcast about the 49ers every stinking day. I mean, I think that's awesome.
Saving $1.25 million.
Right.
Is it just me? I do not care when it comes to cap. Money and things like that's like the least thing I pay attention to at all. Because I feel like if they really want a guy, they can figure out a way to get that guy, regardless of who it is, or keep a guy. Now, there might be other guys that, like Brandon Ayuk. I am not at the least bit worried that the 49ers will figure out a way, if they want to keep Brandon Ayuk, to keep him. Like, I don't think it's one of those scenarios, well, how are they going to have the money to pay Brandon Ayuk? They got the money. They'll move some stuff around and there might be somebody else that has to go. Right. But if they want to keep Brandon Ayuk, they will 100% keep Brandon Ayuk. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the money, except for like just using the example. Would you rather have these two guys or Bosa? Like, okay, we can have that question because I don't think they'll allocate $19 million a year to those guys, then go and pay Joey Bosa a bunch of money. But from the standpoint of like the actual like just dollar amounts and freeing up $1.25 million, like I don't care about that. Maybe I'm alone on that.
I think DeAndre in the chat feels a similar way. He's coming at me, Croc. What do you think about this one? He says, we still got some bread to play with. So Brian's point really doesn't mean S. With all due respect, we got $18 million on June 1st. What do you think? What's that $18 million on June 1st going to get the 49ers, Croc, that we're not seeing, that I'm not seeing right now, Croc?
That might be something planning for the future. I don't think it's anything that they can get used right now.
They try to create space and roll it over every season, and they've done that. And next year is going to get even more difficult, and they're going to have to make more decisions. I think that response by DeAndre was about the defensive end thing, and like I don't know how many defensive ends you're going to have on the roster. You're going to sign two guys, still bring in Joey Bosa, and then you're going to sign a guy on June 1st. Too for $18 million, and you're gonna like there's not enough roster spaces. You're gonna spend $40 million on a defensive end, on defensive ends, the whole group, and then not counting Nick Bosa. So I'm not really sure what he's getting at with the $18 million thing on June 1st. Not a lot of great free agents available on June 1st. You probably get a guy for league minimum on June 1st. From a team building standpoint, I believe they are for the most part set at the on the especially at edge. Yeah, I think they're set. They went and got two guys, and I feel like they went and got those two guys on day one to play a pivotal role in their season to go alongside Nick Bosa. DeAndre says in all caps, Armstead's dead cap money is coming. If he's released with the June 1st designation, which is probably why they kept him onto the active roster and didn't release him before the new league year, because you have to be on the roster before or on the new league year, which was today, before you can release a player with the designation of post June 1st. So you can spread that cap hit, that dead money over 2 years. Yeah, we know what you're talking about, DeAndre. We know what you're talking about on June 1st with more money coming. What are you going to do with $18 million on June 1st is my question. But anyway, I don't know. I was just going to him because he was pretty adamant about something, and I still don't know what he expects to do with that money.
Here's something to be adamant about or have a question about. And this is not, it's kind of 49ers related, kind of not. How's Sam Darnold going to get $10 million from the Vikings? And then Joe Flacco goes and signs with the Colts for like less money than Sam Darnold.
Like people believe in Darnold. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there. Nobody in the world wants to trade for Justin Fields right now. Mac Jones went for a 6th round pick, and teams can't wait to give Sam Darnold another shot.
I feel like I'm maybe higher on Sam than a lot of 49er fans. And even then, I wouldn't give him more money than Joe Flacco. Like, Flacco came in and is like, oh, That is what a pro NFL quarterback looks like. That's a quality starter. Sam Darnold came in with the 49ers, and I don't think he played bad in that game. I think, when he had the starters out there, you had 2 drives, 2 touchdowns. Yeah. But there's no way I would give him more than what I saw from Flacco. Like, in all kind would pay Sam Darnold more money. So if your guy Justin Jefferson is upset right now, I can see why. They said that they offered Justin Jefferson $30 million. I heard Adam Schefter talk about that a year.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm turning that down.
Yeah. That's wild. Dude, the Darnold Flacco, like who the league believes in and who the league pays sometimes is pretty wild too, because Joe Flacco last year, coming off the couch at age 38, whatever he is, had a better season for the Browns last year than any season Sam Darnold's ever had. And that doesn't count Super Bowl seasons from Joe Flacco in his prime. Is Joe Flacco elite? Dude got a $100 million contract with the Ravens, right? Like, he's played a lot of good football in his career. He's got at least, what would you say, half a dozen seasons that are pretty good and at least a lot better than anything Sam Darnold's ever had in his career. And
like you said, including last year, like from the moment he stepped on the field last year, it was better than anything Sam Darnold has put out there. But somehow Sam Darnold gets $10 million and is kind of the projected starter for the Minnesota Vikings. Not 49ers related, but I just thought that was like, wow. What did Kyle Shanahan say to the Minnesota Vikings? Like, guys, like, hey, when they made that phone call, man, what do you think about Sam Darnold? Man, he was really smart, did exactly what we wanted, man, came in. Yeah, go ahead and throw $10 million at him. Like, over a guy like Flacco. That was just interesting.
And when the 49ers brought in Sam Darnold, he gave them a discount. So that made a lot of sense. It was like a $3 million base with $5 million in bonuses. So even if he hit all his bonuses, he's making less than he's going to make this 1 year as potentially a bridge quarterback. And if they don't end up drafting a guy, they must have a plan to draft a guy or trying to trade up to get, say, JJ McCarthy or someone like that. And then maybe Sam Darnold doesn't start very many games, even if he does start the season as a starter. But yeah, there's some surprising stuff out there in the league. And look, the league gets it wrong sometimes too. So that's why sometimes you look at it, you're like, that's weird. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And sometimes we're wrong and they get it right when we do look at something a little bit sideways. The 49ers, speaking of defensive tackles, also bringing back Kevin Givens as well on a 1-year deal, which I love that. He'll give you some good snaps. And I'm sure that one's not, I don't see any dollars on that one yet, but that one's not going to cost a lot of money for the San Francisco 49ers. Maliek Collins is an interesting player, Croc. He's been just rock solid his entire career. He played 4 years with the Dallas Cowboys. He ended up with the Raiders for a year and then with the Houston Texans the last 3 years and was nearly traded apparently for Eric Armstead. Had his best sack output last year. And in fact, if you look at just raw win rate and pass rush win percentages as a defensive tackle last year, was even better than his counterpart, Eric Armstead, who he's replacing on the interior. By the way, they were both drafted in 2016. 5 sacks, a career high last year. Sorry, not a career high. Tied for a career high because he actually had 5 sacks as a rookie, did Maliek Collins. So decent pass rusher inside. I think Jordan Elliott's a little bit more powerful. He's not necessarily a nose tackle or anything like that, but Jordan Elliott, 6'4", 305, has been pretty good as a run-stopping player. He's a strong player. He has some explosive ability, has never really put much together as a pass rusher as far as pass rush ability and pass rush skills, but he can get some pressure and get some push in the pocket at times. And Maliek Collins has been a little bit of a more of a 3-tech, sort of a pass rush type of a guy who I would assume would be the starter with, and he's just the veteran player and he's making more money. And, I would assume that the idea here is that Maliek Collins comes in, he's your starting defensive tackle next to Eric Armstead. And then Jordan Elliott comes in and is a guy who can give you some looks as a run defender, maybe could rush the passer a little bit inside. Yetur Gross-Matos could maybe do the Arden Key and Charles Omenihu thing where he plays some defensive end and then moves inside on some passing downs and gives some pass rush there. Not a ton of snaps inside, but some snaps inside. So we're kind of seeing what the 49ers defense looks like, and they have a rotation of starters and backups now on the defensive line, Croc, when you consider Drake Jackson coming back now and Givens and Hargrave. I don't think that defense is the direction they're going to go in the draft, Croc, because they've spent all their time the last few days in free agency looking at defensive players and even tried to get a linebacker in who ended up going elsewhere in the end. I feel like they're going offense in the draft, Croc. Is that what they're telling us right now?
I feel like that's what they're setting up to do. It's like they're setting up to where, hey, let's load up on some veterans guys so they come in and they do their thing defensively. And then offensively, they're kind of sold up. Like, think about it like this. 49ers have their starting running back coming back. 49ers have their starting quarterback coming back. 49ers have all of their starting receivers coming back and their starting tight end coming back. They also have every starting offensive lineman coming back except for Feliciano, who, if they want him to come back, they can get him back. And maybe he's going out there and seeing what's offered to him. I think there's a lot of people that feel like the 49ers are going to go out there and just start swinging for the fences with the offensive line, especially that right side. I'm not so sure that. I think they are doing things to where, hey, we are fine with the guys we have coming back. And if there's an opportunity for us to move up, trade up for a guy that's high on our board at the tackle position or guard position, I like Barton, then okay, we can do that. But I think the 49ers maybe feel a different way about their offensive line for the most part, as far as being able to get through a season with the running it back with that same old line that I think most fans do.
I think
that's not saying they don't want to address it. That's just saying if they don't, like, if need doesn't meet value at pick 31 or around there, I could see them going in a different direction where most people think it should be 100% you are taking a guard or a tackle. And I don't know if they do, great. Then that guy was high on their board. But if they go and they take a safety, if they take a corner, right, and then continue to kind of load up on defense, I wouldn't at all be surprised by that.
Speaking of offensive players, Croc, we've been doing a lot of work on offensive linemen, some wide receivers, some cornerbacks, and those positions have not been addressed yet in free agency by the 49ers. So very good chance they're going to draft some of those guys early. And we got some more of those scouting reports coming up. We've got Graham Barton. We got Amarius Mims. We got Tyler Guyton, a trio, a trifecta of offensive linemen, I think probably on tomorrow's show, unless there's some big news happening. I see Roger Rosengarten. He's going to be on the list as well. We're going to look at a lot more players that the 49ers could potentially take at pick 31, at pick 63, and even beyond as we get ready for the 2024 NFL draft. And as Mike Silver said, they're not done yet. So we'll see what else happens in free agency. We have trades on tap. Do we have some more signings on tap for the 49ers? We'll find out. And of course, we'll have it all covered for you right here. Locked On 49ers.